Hello, and welcome to the show that's somehow still on the air, despite my best efforts to get fired. Today, we're diving into the fascinating, often confusing, world of equity. Now, I know what you're thinking. Equity. Is this another one of those financial terms that sounds like it was made up by a bunch of guys in suits who summer in the Hamptons? And to that, I say, you're goddamn right it is. But stick with me, because understanding the difference between private and public companies is more important than figuring out whatever the hell a Bitcoin is. You see, companies, much like teenagers, come in different shapes and sizes, each with its own set of rules and quirks. We're going to focus on two main types: private limited companies and public limited companies. Think of them as the shy, walk-with kid in the corner and the prom king or queen of the school. Both part of the same ecosystem, but with very different social statuses and rules to play with. Over the next few minutes, we'll unpack what makes each tick, what sets them apart, and why you should even give a rat's ass about any of this. Because, believe it or not, this stuff impacts all of us. So buckle up, grab a cup of chai, and let's get down to business. So, let's start with the wallflowers, shall we? A private limited company in the glorious land of India is a bit like that friend we all have who treasures their privacy. They like to keep things close to the chest and avoid the limelight and operate on their own terms. Legally speaking, they're a separate legal entity from their owners, meaning the company itself is responsible for its debts and obligations, not the individuals running the show. Now, this separation is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it retains the personal assets of the owners and the company goes belly up, but on the other hand, it limits their ability to raise funds from the public. Think of it as the difference between borrowing money from your mate versus asking a complete stranger. One's a lot easier than the other, right? Here's a fun fact. Private limited companies in India can have a maximum of 200 shareholders. That's right, only 200 lucky ducks can get a piece of that private company pie. This restriction is in place to ensure that these companies remain relatively small and manageable. Like saying, look, we're a tight-knit group, not some massive corporation trying to take over the world. Well, you might be wondering, what happens if a private company wants to expand beyond those 200 shareholders? Well, they have two options. Either convert to a public limited company, more on that later, or stay private and find creative ways to raise capital without going public. It's a bit like trying to fit into your favorite parent jeans after a very young vision. Not always easy, but not impossible either. Now, let's move on to the more extroverted bunch, the public limited companies. These are the companies that thrive on attention, crave the spotlight, and aren't afraid to ask the public for money. They're like the friend who's always up for a good time, ready to dance on tables and tell embarrassing stories, though hopefully not about their finances. Public limited companies are also separate legal entities, offering their owners limited liability. But unlike their private counterparts, they can raise capital by issuing shares to the public. This means anyone with a brokerage account and a pulse can buy a piece of the company. It's democracy in action, folks. But instead of voting for politicians, you're voting for which companies you think will make you the most money. While private companies have a shareholder limit, public companies have a shareholder minimum. That's right. To even be considered a public company in India, you need at least 7 shareholders. It's like the bare minimum requirement for a decent party. You need at least 7 people to make it semi-respectable, right? This requirement ensures that public companies have a certain level of public interest and participation. It also makes it harder for 1 or 2 individuals to control a large portion of the company's shares, which can be good for transparency and corporate governance. Though, let's be honest, those things aren't always guaranteed, even with a bunch of shareholders. Now, let's talk about share liquidity. In the world of private companies, shares are about as liquid as your aunt's famous chutney. Thick, sticky, and not easy to get rid of. See, when you own shares in a private company, you're basically stuck with them, unless you can find another willing buyer. And let me tell you, finding someone who wants to buy your shares in your second cousin's textile business can be harder than finding a decent samosa in a foreign country. This lack of liquidity is one of the main drawbacks of investing in private companies. It's like being stuck in a long-term relationship with no prenup. You're in it for the long haul, whether you like it or not. On the flip side, shares in public companies are like the opposite of your aunt's chutney. They're smooth, flowing, and easier to trade than a backpack full of rupees outside a mandi. That's because public companies list their shares on stock exchanges, where anyone can buy and sell them with relative ease. It's like a giant flea market for company ownership, with buyers and sellers constantly haggling over prices. This ease of trading makes public company shares much more liquid than their private counterparts. You can buy or sell them at any time during market outs, and you don't need to find a specific buyer or seller beforehand. It's as simple as clicking a button on your computer screen, or yelling at a broker over the phone if you're old school like that. So, how do public companies get their shares traded on these magical stock exchanges? Well, they have to go through a little process called listing. Imagine it's like trying to get into an exclusive nightclub. You need to meet certain requirements, pay a hefty fee, and convince the bouncer, in this case, the stock exchange, that you're cool enough to be let in. Listing is a major milestone for any company. It gives them access to a much larger pool of capital, increases their visibility and credibility, and allows their shares to be traded freely among investors. It's like graduating from college, getting your dream job, and marrying the love of your life all in one fell swoop, though hopefully less messy. But what does it actually mean for a company to be listed on a stock exchange? Well, it means their shares are officially recognized and available for trading on that particular exchange. Think of it like having your name listed in the phone book. Anyone looking for you can easily find you. Being listed also comes with a whole host of responsibilities. Listed companies have to comply with strict regulations and disclosure requirements designed to protect investors. They also have to be more transparent about their financial performance and operations, which can be both a blessing and a curse, especially if you're trying to keep your quarterly earnings a secret. Now, India has two main stock exchanges where companies can be listed: the Bombay Stock Exchange, or BSE, and the National Stock Exchange of India, or NSE. These are the big leagues, the major players, the places where companies go to make it big. Think of them as the IPL of the financial world, with companies battling it out for investor attention and bragging rights. The BSE is the older of the two, kind of like the wise old grandfather of the Indian stock market, while the NSE is the younger, more tech-savvy sibling, known for its innovation and efficiency. Now, with all this talk of listing and stock exchanges, you might be thinking, who's keeping an eye on all these companies to make sure they're not up to no good? Well, that's where regulatory bodies like the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or SEBI, come in. They're like the financial police, patrolling the market, forcing rules, and cracking down on insider trading, fraud, and other shady practices. Of course, no system is perfect, and there will always be companies trying to game the system. But regulatory oversight is crucial for maintaining a fair and transparent market, where investors have had some degree of confidence that they're not being taken for a ride. So there you have it. A crash course in the world of equity, private versus public companies, and everything in between. We've covered a lot of ground today, from the intricacies of private limited companies to the excitement of public listings. Remember, understanding the different types of companies and how they operate is crucial for anyone looking to invest their hard-earned money. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out, I hope this video has shed some light on this complex but fascinating world. As always, thank you for tuning in. And remember, Investing in your financial education is never a bad idea. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of equity, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more informative content, and leave a comment below with any questions or topics you'd like me to cover in future videos. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious. Most importantly, don't take any financial advice from a comedian.